Das Wort hat Herr Farage.
Mr. Farage has the floor.
Nigel Farage.
There just seems to be a total lack of comprehension on this panel, and indeed amongst this audience, which is a remarkable audience, even by the left-wing standards of the BBC. I mean, this lot's pretty left-wing.
Hang on a second.
But very interesting.
Hang on a second.
When you talk
Nigel,
about
let me
housing,
just say one thing.
Yeah.
This is an audience
Yeah.
being carefully chosen, not
Very
by the
carefully.
BBC, not by the BBC, but
Yeah.
by an independent polling organisation to represent the balance between all parties.
Never a great
That's
idea.
very good.
So
Very good. Very good.
anyway, carry on.
I think it's very interesting.
It's never a great idea to
You
attend
cannot
the
discuss.
audience, Nigel, in
you
my...
cannot
my-
discuss.
in my
No, the real audience is sitting at home, actually. You cannot
No,
discuss.
hang on.
No, that's
let him
fine.
have his say.
No, that's fine.
That I would see my role as the chairman of the trust to be above all things to represent the audience, to represent the British licence fee payers. My second is that I would aim to defend vigorously and against all comers the independence and the impartiality of the BBC, because that, I think, is one of its critical points, and I think we would lose that at our peril, both as a country and as an organisation.
In your opening spiel, you said that you wanted to I think your second one was that you wanted, the word you used was to defend the BBC's impartiality. Mm-hmm. That implies it already is impartial, and therefore you want to, when you defend something, it means you want to preserve it. In your answer you just gave, you raised a question as to whether or not it was genuinely impartial. So where do you sort of stand on this? Do you feel that the BBC is genuinely impartial in everything it does at the moment, or do you think it isn't?
I think the role for the BBC is that it has to be impartial, and I think
we know that, but do you think it is? I mean, I'm asking you whether you think it is or it isn't.
I think broadly yes, and if you look at the public research, the data would say that the public, on the whole, thinks it's impartial. I think the important thing for the Trust to do, as the oversight body, is to ensure that that impartiality is very clear and is understood and is unquestioned.
Are you aware of the Wilson review into BBC impartiality that took place a number of years ago?
Now, I don't know the details of that particular review.
Well, can I suggest if you are confirmed in the position that you go away and have a look at it and then ensure that the BBC actually deals with the issues that were raised regarding its impartiality in those other reviews, because that would suggest that it isn't quite as impartial as you would suggest.
Well, now, Patrick O'Flynn is Director of Communications for UKIP. Barbara Roach is a former immigration minister under Tony Blair, and she's heading a cross-party campaign to tackle UKIP. Doesn't the very formation of a cross-party campaign from old vested interests like you and your colleagues on other parties demonstrate precisely why UKIP is successful, that you're out of touch with public opinion and they're not?
No, I don't think it does at all. I think it's the mainstream party saying there are very real differences about Europe, there are very real differences about immigration, and let's discuss them. But let's have it in the way where we pander to the lowest common denominator, where we have a campaign in which if we were talking about black people or Asian people, people would be up in arms. But it's okay to talk about people from Europe. 26 million of them, apparently, are coming over here looking for jobs.
Let's look at this poster here, and you tell us why this poster, 26 million people in Europe are looking for work, whose jobs are they after? Why is that racist?
Because it's an absolute nonsense, isn't it?
It may be nonsense. That's not the same as being racist.
So there are 26 million people, so it's alarmist, in Europe who are going to come here
That wasn't your accusation. Your accusation was it was racist. Why is that racist?
And I'll explain. If you substituted for the word Europe, you substituted people from Africa or people from Asia are coming here to look for work, everybody would think that was absolute racist. Because there's no reason at all why it says Europe that isn't racist in exactly the same way. It's alarmist, it's nonsense, and as Nicholas Soames says, it's completely divisive.
Why do you think your party does appeal to racists?
I don't think our party appeals to racists any more than the other parties. What I do think is that we're under enormous media scrutiny, which I don't complain about. As Ming Campbell said to me yesterday, welcome to Test match cricket. where there are people who've expressed racist sentiments, we root them out and we take disciplinary action.
You don't accept
including
that poster is racist?
Well, of course it's not racist. I mean, the ironic thing is we in UKIP are proposing an immigration policy which would be a level playing field with every country in the world, a points-based system, so the migrants who can benefit Britain can come here. What we have at the moment is open-door migration from more than 24 neighbouring countries, and the absurd situation where an Indian engineer or a New Zealand brain surgeon would struggle to get in, but an Eastern European vagrant has a complete right to come. I mean, that is the double standard, and it's crazy.
Why are you raising your eyebrows?
Well, I think Patrick doesn't quite appreciate that we have a system at the moment which has points-based elements, because in
Not
I think
for the
2000
EU.
I actually
The EU,
spoke
anyone
I
can
actually
come
spoke
here
about
from the EU,
it.
can't
But
they?
yes, because that's that we have that level playing field where there are a lot
It's
of
not
British,
level though,
there
Barbara,
are
that's
a
the
lot
point.
of British people, as you know, working and living in Europe, and you give them no thought. But the question is this, isn't it? We hear almost on a daily basis about extreme candidates. If they're not attacking Lenny Henry, you have these UKIP candidates now today attacking Mo Farah for not being British enough, or talking about banning Islam. And is it any wonder when you have the leader of your party saying to The Guardian on Saturday, when asked, should people be worried about Romanian families living in their street, he says yes. Is it any wonder that you're encouraging racists of this kind?
Well, I completely refute that accusation. And quite frankly, let's be real about this. People value their sense of community. When any people come from another community or nationality, that causes them to worry about their community cohesion.
So you disagree with your leader on this subject?
No, I'm saying when anyone comes from another
country. So
country...
you'd be quite happy to have Romanians living next to you, unlike your leader?
Well, look, what we know about the Romanian influx we've had so far is there's an over-representation in certain sorts of crime and antisocial behaviour, for instance, cash point fraud, for instance, nuisance begging in the middle of big cities.
That's a whole country.
Well, you seem to have this amazing thing of putting words in my mouth. I mean, if you'd let me finish, there are many Romanians who work extremely hard, and Romanians who, with those values, coming to live in your street, fine once you get to know them. If it's Romanians running a cash point skimming gang, then yeah, you've got every right to be concerned and sustain that concern.
The question, though, wasn't, are you happy to have people indulging in criminal activity living next to you? It was Romanians in general. And to actually make that whole statement about a whole country strikes me as extraordinary. Is it any wonder that you have people aligning with themselves who have this view? And I think it's a great pity because, of course, there are very, very many decent people who have voted for UKIP in the past.
How sweet of you to say so,
and who will
Barbara.
vote for UKIP in the future.
They will.
And it's a great shame that some of their representatives and candidates have these extreme views.
Two things we know is, one, 70% plus of the British public do not want open-door, unlimited immigration from the rest of the European Union. And the second thing we know is there's an extraordinary degree of antipathy towards the Westminster political class represented by you today. So I have to say to you,
and you were a lovely correspondent for 20 years,
you're a lovely
Patrick.
person, but with enemies like you, who needs friends? That would be UKIP's analysis of today.
I think we'll stop this before it gets personal. OK, thank you both.
Well, the leader of UKIP has been in Slough drumming up support for next month's local elections. Nigel Farage has met with many local activists in what is one of Berkshire's most diverse towns. So how has his message of curbing immigration been received? Alex Bushell has more.
He is the leader of a party accused of racism, and today he was campaigning in one of our most ethnically diverse towns. He says no matter. The writing is on the wall for the main political parties. The problem is, so are photos of would-be supporters at the pub he chose to hold his photo call.
Slough is one of the most economically vibrant towns in the country. Its success has been built on migrant labour, and yet your immigration policy would have Slough not ever exist. Why should people here vote for you?
No, I mean, come on, let's just get a sense of perspective on this, shall we? We have three political parties who support a total open door to 485 million people with no checks or controls of any kind at all. We support an immigration policy that says we should not discriminate against people from India India and New Zealand in favour of Poland, Romania and Bulgaria. That we need an immigration policy that controls not just quantity but quality as well.
Slough is one of the most ethnically diverse towns in the country. Look around you, everyone here is white. How are you going to appeal to people in Slough?
Well, over 60%, in fact that's not true and you know that.
What about this gentleman then?
Yeah. Hello, how are we doing? All right.
This gentleman here's a UKIP candidate.
Yeah, you're standing for us, are you?
I am indeed.
Yeah, good lad. Very, very good. We've got a rabbi standing for us. We've got a mixed race candidate in the north of England. We've got a practicing Muslim who's going to win a seat in Yorkshire for us. I mean, we've got actually a more diverse bunch of people probably than the other parties.
At the last local elections, Labour swept the board here. Now he wants to squeeze their traditional working class vote, as well as splitting the Tory one. Traditional Labour voters like Harvinder Dayal, who has come over to UKIP.
It's the people who are fed up from the Labour and from Conservative, because, you know, we keep on having them and they promise and they don't keep their promises.
Elsewhere in the town, though, and UKIP's appeal is less obvious.
People come from outside this country, willing to work. There's nothing wrong with it. Without immigration, you can't run this country. So
not let any riffraff in, but people that are working, qualified, that are good for the economy and that.
There's a lot of Romanians and Eastern European workers coming, so I think maybe in that way people are fed up.
As for UKIP, he knows that if he and his party are going to have the electoral success that he's predicting, they'll have to broaden their appeal. And the battle to win over the voters of Slough could be critical. Alex Bushell, BBC London News.
On Wednesday, May 7th, the UK Independence Party hosted a rally in the heart of Westminster. Protesters flocked in their dozens, while attendees to hear Nigel Farage and his colleagues outnumbered them by about 5 to 1. Anti-UKIP activists were urged to attend by groups like Unite Against Fascism, themselves having had ties to questionable individuals and groups in the United Kingdom. The killer of British soldier Lee Rigby, who was murdered on a London street by an Islamist terrorist, spoke at a Unite Against Fascism meeting in 2009. The mood created by protesters was downright unpleasant. As business people and elderly individuals queued to get into the UKIP event, they were accosted and abused by protesters. Some were concerned that the media was filming them, as they willingly confessed to being motivated by hate, calling themselves the UKIP haters. This man called me a faggot for wearing a pink shirt. I thought these were supposed to be the tolerant folks. A BBC comedy outfit even attempted to stoke tensions by pretending to be UKIP activists and charging at the crowd. They were swiftly ejected by police. I asked other protesters what they'd say to UKIP leader Nigel Farage if he was standing in front of them.
If Nigel Farage was standing in front of you right now, what would you say to him?
I would say that he was a liar and a hypocrite.
I would say, Nigel Farage, shame on you. We have no place here in London for racist bigots and bankers like you. Shame on you! UKIP is a racist party! Shame on you! UKIP! No way! Immigrants! UKIP! No way! Immigrants! UKIP! No way!
But the scenes inside the event were drastically different. Speakers of various ethnic origins took the stage to defend against the cries of racism and hit back at the British press for buying into the lies.
I would like to speak today about why I think the UK Independence Party is not only good for Britain, but also great for all British people, irrespective of race, colour and religion.
Some protesters got into the hall, unaware of the irony of shouting racist scum at the black security men and the black Jewish speaker on stage.
What does that say about UKIP being racist? A black man running for the leadership. I'm black and I'm proud and I'll shout it out loud. Let's look at the situation with the media. The boys are here, back in town. And as the boys are looking for the stories, racism raised its ugly head above the parapet. And why is it that it's only at election time that we're going to get this nonsense?
UKIP leader Nigel Farage took to the stage at the end, saying he felt like a supporting act to the diverse candidates who preceded him. He very much was. He issued a plea to media and political parties alike. Whether it will be heeded is anyone's guess.
of these speakers, I feel I have nothing more than a supporting act. I don't care what you call us. You can call us right-wing, left-wing. You can call us small-minded. You can call us whatever you... I don't care what you call us. But from this moment on, please, do not ever call us a racist party. We are not...
The other keynote moment, of course, came with a sort of not get Ed evening, but a get Nigel evening, as it seemed many of the other party leaders rounded on the UKIP leader, prompting him to express his frustration at what he saw as the left-wing bias of the panel and the audience. Frustration expressed afterwards to me by the deputy leader of the party, Paul Nuttall. This is what he told me. But he also turned on the audience, didn't he? He seemed to think that it was somehow a left-wing audience.
Well, we've seen it before, and it does happen. I can't.
Sorry, you've seen what before?
Well, we've seen audiences which, shall we say, pick from the left, I would say.
Do you think the BBC selected a left-wing audience?
Well, I'm not saying they've selected. I will probably say that maybe some of the people in the audience mightn't have been telling the truth on their application form, shall we say. I've witnessed it myself on Question Time. It can be very difficult. I'll tell you what, Norman. You tell me the last time you heard massive rounds of applause for nuclear disarmament and a pin drop. You could hear a pin drop when Nigel Farage spoke about controlling immigration into Britain. I haven't heard that in my lifetime. You make the decision. I think there was something wrong.
Will you be complaining to the BBC about this?
I'm not sure whether we'll complain. All I will say is I didn't think that the audience was representative of the views of British people. And I think Nigel Farage would have done very well tonight with people sitting there at home.
Well, Paul Nuttall there leaving open the option of a complaint to the BBC over the way they believe that audience was put together that did not reflect, they think, the political representation of Britain.
Peter Hitchens, those who feel disillusioned with the current political system
are right to do so. They have been systematically betrayed, and I see no end to it. There are so many issues which have been visited on this country by an elite of self-selecting, closed-minded people, as well represented here this evening, and actually largely incompetent as well, which have done enormous damage to our way of life. So, for instance, who now has anything to say about the deindustrialization of this country and the destruction of manufacturing jobs under the Thatcher government? Who can reverse it? Who can do anything about it? Who will say anything on this panel about the catastrophe of mass immigration, which has changed this country irrevocably into somewhere completely different from what it was? They won't talk about it. They won't talk seriously about the immense problems of crime and disorder, which affect millions of people in their homes and leave them utterly vulnerable to all kinds of unpleasantness and violence and menace, which they never used to have to undergo. And there is no sense whatsoever that there will be any reform of the criminal justice system or any attempt to put it right again. These are just some of the subjects on which this elite just constantly refuse to discuss.
Why?
Why? Because they themselves have an ideology. They themselves have the ideology of metropolitan bourgeois bohemians. They despise most people outside.
What are you, man of the people?
They despise. Well,
I mean, you're the only person on this panel.
I'm no more a man of the people than you are.
I don't claim to be, but you're making a picture of me.
I'm simply saying these are the things which they will not do anything about, which they will not do, because they themselves benefit. They themselves benefit from many of the things which do immense damage. They've benefited from globalisation. They've benefited from mass immigration.
We'll talk about mass immigration. Let's talk about immigrants coming over here, propping up our NHS, treating us when we're ill.
They're not affected. Their children don't go to bog standard comprehensives. They're not affected. They're not affected by crime. Yes, I do know how I'm talking about, because I know what they do all the time. They will not discuss these things. They will not do anything about them. They ignore what you say, and you think that at general election time you can do something about it. No, the people who stand before you at general election time for the political parties are people who've been pre-selected. You have no control. If I stood for Parliament, or if he stood for Parliament, from our positions, which are quite popular, the fact is the party machines would erase us. The immense amounts of money they're capable of spending, the enormous access they have to the broadcasting organisations, which we don't have most of the time, would make it impossible.
You've got more access than I have,
would make it impossible, on the contrary, would make it impossible for anyone outside
Peter, sorry, the question was, what would you say to people who feel like you clearly do about the current political association?
I just said it.
Well, no, wait a moment. What would you say to them about how to change things? Are you going to stand as an MP?
I'm sorry.
Are you going to stand as an MP?
No, because for the reasons I've just explained, I wouldn't have the faintest chance. No, my advice to anybody young enough to do so is to emigrate before it's too late.
Oh, for goodness sake. I mean,
the paper that hates Britain, you heard it here.
This is a ridiculous council of despair. I think our country's best days are ahead of us, not behind us. And I think Peter Hitchens needs to get with the programme. I got involved in politics, actually, through my mum, who was a member of the CND and used to take me on CND marches. Oh, wow. And I thought this is interesting, exciting. It was the 1980s. There was a big debate about ideas. And I think that, you know, if you want to be involved in politics, you can be involved in politics. And I want more people to be involved in politics. I think we should make Parliament more open, more easier to access, more friendly to people from different backgrounds. I think it is becoming quite an elite of a particular type of professional. I think that's a problem. I think we need to think about the way it operates, the terms and conditions, all those kind of things. I'm excited by the primaries that we've done in the Conservative Party to get a wider group of people involved in politics. We need to revive local... No, we've got some new ones coming up, actually, David. Maybe Question Time might be involved. But what we need to do is we need to open up politics. We need to make local government count through localism so that people are involved. But this idea that everything is always awful, that's one of the reasons why people turn off politics, because they just hear this constant moaning.
The Daily Mail might call you the man who hates Britain. After what you just said.
Exactly.
The Ed Miliband of our day.
Feel free to call me.
I mean, it's not the Ed, the Rafe Miliband.
It's not Britain I hate. Britain I love. Every field and hedgerow. It's the people who run it.
Or the people who live here.
And who are wrecking it. And so, like anybody who cares about his country, I'm distressed by it. I see no hope from these interchangeable people. She was a Liberal Democrat. For all I know, she still is.
Let's hear from
I mean, just before I answer the question, we've just got to get away from this nonsense that is peddled by Peter and people like him, that immigration is some kind of curse in this country. It is a blessing. It has made...